So Dave, talk to me. The Coffs Bypass Project, $2.2 billion of state and federal funding. Huge project, absolute game changer for the northern New South Wales coast. Talk to me about your perspective, how that led into sort of your expansion strategically in buying the business in Coffs.
Yeah, well, mate, I go up there about 8 times a week, so I asked the government if it could save me about an hour 30 a week. No, unfortunately, I'm not that connected. Look, of course, it's a time saver, which is really important for tourism up and down the coast. I think, from Sydney to Gold Coast, it's getting shorter and shorter every year. And there's a big bypass down at Hexham Bridge that no one's really talking about as well. So, but that's just going to make everything a little bit closer. It'll even make Coffs Harbour closer for people that are looking to visit, for a couple of days. So that's exciting. I'm an avid property investor. Whenever, you're looking at an area, infrastructure improvement is really important. That Coffs area is a bottleneck, and I think that's probably some people have avoided stopping there because of that. I think that frees that up, and then we'll see some gentrification in the town. So I'm actually quite interested to see what the next steps, what the government or what the council does in zoning and, how they repurpose a lot of that area. But there's been no bypass where a town hasn't done better after.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm interested to hear your perspective on the local economy and specifically on the impact on the commercial real estate and what that's going to look like. But I think there's a few members of our team that are pretty keen to see the bypass open and maybe save a bit of dollars, a bit of cash going through and saving the gas as they come through that bottleneck like you mentioned. But talk to me about commercial real estate developers, investors. You mentioned rezoning. A lot of that land obviously privately owned. Not a lot of exposure to debt risk. How do you see that evolving over the next couple of years?
Yeah, a really good question. Opportunity comes where you can actually look at, what you can do and repurpose it. The accommodation properties, a lot of motels along that area. So what happens to them? Do they get busier? Do they need to be repurposed? Do they turn into residential? I think we need to sort of stay tuned and watch for that. I think as an area, I talk about being able to raise a family. Central Coast, you can certainly do that. Newcastle, you can do that. There's a big gap really up to probably Port Macquarie. Next stop is Coffs. And then there's Ballin. And of course, other areas along there you can, raise family. But when you're looking for infrastructure like hospitals, university, TAFEs, airports, they're the main areas that you're looking at. I think Coffs has got a lot of room for growth. Port Macquarie is a sort of a smaller town. It's more connected by a road. It's one town. Coffs is a little bit disjointed, but there's a lot of beauty in Coffs. So I think strategic development will be very, very exciting. Newer accommodation businesses are lacking a little bit. I think some boutique motels and hotels are going to pop up. Of course, we're seeing some of that cafe culture, a few different restaurants. Yeah, I'm always looking for different investment areas. The reason why, we've been lucky enough to, secure Nolan's and join the lifestyle group is I really think Coffs in the next 5 to 10 years is going to see some serious growth and some development.
Yeah, I agree. That strategic investment made in sort of the last quarter of last year is very exciting for someone who obviously joined the group within the last 6 months. It's very much something to watch and exciting to be a part of. Who do you think is the biggest winners coming out of this project, Dave?
Look, I would say people enjoying the area. So I think for locals and tourists, anyone looking to enjoy Coffs, I think it's going to be a more enjoyable area to travel through. The jetty, they're talking about different things that are going to happen down at the jetty precinct. I think that's a very exciting area. I mean, if that was open, there's a lot of state government land down there or federal government land, but if that was open for private development, what you could do down to that jetty area, we're seeing a couple of new buildings already coming off the ground there. There's lots of developers looking around townhouse type developments. I think whenever this change happens, the uncertainty does bring a little bit of fear in.
Yeah.
I think there will be some businesses that do rely on the constant traffic that does stop. So there's going to be a transient period where, some people will win straight away. Some people might have a slight disadvantage, and for those I feel for. But I think long term, Coffs will function so much better, because it'll also take, even around that back road to the jetty, it'll take pressure off that road, of course, to the main street. I really think that main centre of town will benefit from development.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned some trepidation around specifically maybe some retail users or retail occupiers. And I think from what I've seen, major infrastructure projects, it changes from a bit more of a transient style retail to a bit more of a boutique, thoughtful design, a bit more of a just a destination city as opposed to a transient city, which I think is really exciting. And you mentioned obviously the CBD going through that corridor. You might see some softening around the convenience retailers, the gas station or petrol station retailers. Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
But the big box users, all the way up to sort of the industrial last mile, I think are really sort of licking their lips over this, because we're talking about a significant, like you said, you used the term bottleneck, that congestion coming off the road, those trucks coming off the road. You mentioned sort of next steps. I do think that the Coffs Harbour, the local government, the state government, New South Wales, is in a unique position right now, and sort of where they go from here, right? So that CBD, I think there's a lot of potential there. Crime is a bit of an issue. Obviously, the traffic we've talked about at length. What do you think, sort of thoughtful designs? What are your thoughts around sort of where we go from here?
Yeah, and I think the two key areas that we probably haven't spoken about is Woolgoolga and Nambucca are really going to benefit from this. So your two outer lyings. And I think, as we're seeing in like the Central Coast or urban sprawls, um, Nambucca to Woolgoolga and everywhere in between will sort of merge into one. I'm a very visual person, and some towns are prettier than others.
Mm.
When you've got a busy intersection like in Coffs with the amount of trucks going through there, it does affect how visually attractive it is. So I think once we see some new businesses come in and it comes alive, I think it's really exciting. The reason I suppose there's some pauses, and I'll be really honest as an investor, sometimes it's quite obvious things that will happen. I'm still quite open to what I would do into Coffs and what I'd invest. Definitely accommodation needs to be there. I think there's definitely opportunity for some food. But as that town grows, we're going to see more professionals in the town, more financial planners,
Yeah.
finance. Hopefully, not too many more real estate agents.
Yeah.
But but like we've seen in Newcastle, like dramatically change,
Yeah.
gentrification there with the wharf and everything like that. Central Coast is really Sydney now. Port Macquarie is a different town, but as we've seen what's happened around the Thrumps area and continue to happen down there,
Mm.
Costs it will really be, it could definitely outgrow some of those other, Port and Coffs it's been quite close, but I think with some of these changes, my gut feel is that Coffs economy is in a position to outgrow Port just because of the size and
Interesting.
possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It's fascinating to me. You made a really good point just now. These occupiers, particularly of office real estate, tend to follow where the talent goes. So if there is an appealing lifestyle, and somebody looks at Coffs Harbour and says, "Hey, there's significant investment coming in from the government, but also it's just a fun place to live," and it's look at all these new retailers and these, I'm a foodie, so I like I like these boutique retailers. I'm going to start looking at opportunities in Coffs. Employers really pay attention to that data and really pay
Yeah.
attention to that noise, and start thinking, Coffs could be a really viable option for me to look at a corporate relocation or a
It,
corporate expansion. Going back to industrial, I do
Because
think you go. Sorry.
yeah, no, you're right. I think like the beaches aren't connected like some areas. Like
Mm,
you've got to drive into Sapphire Beach and then come out and then go down to the different beaches that are around. So it's a different type of area. I think a lot of people that might have only driven through and seen the Coffs Harbour don't realise how pretty it is. I
mm,
don't pay politics, but what I would really like to see is the state government and federal government backing this type of infrastructure. The cost of affordability in Sydney is out of control. We really need to start seeing some government bodies,
Mm.
or even banks and different institutions bring some of their employment hubs regionally. And I can't think of any better than Coffs Harbour and the surrounds. So that's what I'm hoping to see.
Yeah, agreed.
And of course, construction and building is going to be strong forever.
Yeah,
There's so much land still to be developed, and opportunities like that.
yeah. Thinking back recently, one of the biggest disruptors of commercial real estate specifically was obviously COVID. Uh, and we talked a lot about sort of repurposing of assets. I don't know if a lot of that actually eventuated as sort of the analysts were projecting. Do you think this is going to kickstart for the right reasons, going to kickstart some potentially repurposing? You mentioned rezoning earlier.
Yeah, I think you'll see residential development happen. I think it's more the commercial hub that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Nambucca's looking to have a big industrial area outside of Coffs. I think that'll benefit from the trucks. You've got the industrial area up near Woolgoolga, which is very attractive
right.
and quite sought after. It's the CBD and the gentrification of what they do in the CBD. And I imagine to support the CBD, high rise will definitely be on the cards. And then if it's a more attractive area to live and you're not having so many trucks go through the town, obviously you can get more for the apartments, and then you'll start to see. And then once you have more residents, you're going to see more retail. So, that'll be a journey. That will be a journey. But I can only see positives. But I think to the nervous retailers or people that own businesses, I think that's just lean in, have conversations. We've got really good architects and town planners on board, and just be always looking at those other options, whether it's a childcare centre or NDAS or other factors that possibly your property could be repurposed for.
Yeah. So, last question for you, Dave. If I were a potential developer or an investor in commercial real estate in Coffs Harbour, and I was looking at Coffs Harbour as my next move, what would your advice be to me?
Yeah, I mean, you've got some of the resorts and you've got a couple of motels in town. I think something very boutique and quite swanky. I think that would really work.
Yeah.
I mean, these wellness retreat centres, like a cracking wellness retreat centre. You know, I would be looking at what's on trend in Brisbane, what's on trend in Newcastle. Those markets aren't too far apart, and looking to put those type of infrastructure into Coffs Harbour. The one thing, you know, I've learned from being Sydney and coming to the mid north coast is, they want everything that a big city's got to offer, and they certainly do appreciate it. There once might have been a gap when didn't have Facebook or travel, but now everyone sees it through Instagram. So whatever's funky in Brisbane, Sydney, they're seeing it in Coffs Harbour, and I know the uptake is really, really solid. So I think wellness, accommodation businesses, I think there's still growth from some really cool food, boutique breweries and those type of things. Hospitality in an area like Coffs will always be a winner. Um, and I know up and down the coast, obviously, the big wholesaler, like the retailers, are looking to come into the Coffs.
Very good. Well, thank you very
Hope
much.
that answers your questions, mate.
It does. I appreciate you. I'm very excited
Yeah,
to see what the future holds for Coffs Harbour. This is
yeah.
certainly an exciting time, very unique time, and I'm excited to be part of it. Thank you, mate.
And like I always say to the team, like it's the time to be curious. Like it's the time to be curious. Have an open mind, be curious, and just think what could possibly work there. Keep dreaming. Yeah, it's
Love it.
exciting.
Love
Awesome,
it.
mate. Speak soon.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
All right. I said